They lied about JFK, and they lied about 9/11. They knew more, they hid more, and they still won't tell us the truth. In our last video, we exposed what the newly released JFK files revealed. How intelligence agencies ignored warnings, buried evidence, and left key questions unanswered for over 60 years. Now, we're looking at another moment in American history surrounded by secrecy, 9/11. Because while the country mourned and the world changed, the full truth still locked away. It is time to ask, what are they hiding and why? The official story is familiar. 19 hijackers, mostly from Saudi Arabia, coordinated by Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. A failure of imagination, they said. But just like with JFK, the closer you look at the facts and the files, the more questions you find. Because over 20 years later, key documents remain classified, redacted, or quietly ignored. Let's start with the infamous 28 pages, a section of the Congressional 9/11 Inquiry Report that was kept secret from the public for over a decade. When they were finally released in 2016, they suggested that Saudi government officials had direct ties to at least 2 of the hijackers. They helped them find housing, gave them money. One official even allegedly had repeated contact with a Saudi intelligence agent in the US, and yet, to this day, some of the names and evidence remain redacted. Why? The US has never held Saudi Arabia publicly accountable. Instead, multiple administrations have maintained silence, or worse, protection. Here is what most people don't know. The CIA was tracking 2 of the hijackers, Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Mihdar, long before 9/11. They had been flagged and their meetings were being watched, and yet, that intelligence was never passed on to the FBI. Former agents, investigators, and even members of the 9/11 Commission have asked why. Was it an intelligence failure or an intentional breakdown in communication? And if it was intentional, who ordered it? There's more, a lot more. Not speculation, real pieces of the story that still don't add up. Take the Pentagon. Dozens of cameras were recording that day. Gas stations, nearby businesses, the Pentagon's own security system. But what did we see? Just a few frames. Blurry, incomplete, a single explosion, no clear image of a plane. And to this day, the rest of that footage has never been released. Then there's the money trail. In the days leading up to the attack, large bets were placed against major airlines, United and American. Someone was gambling that their stocks would crash, and when they did, those traders made millions. The FBI opened an investigation, but no one was ever charged. The case quietly dropped, buried. And what about the families? Thousands of lives were lost that day, and 2 decades later, many of their loved ones are still in court, still fighting to access documents that could link foreign officials to the hijackers, still facing resistance from the very government that promised them transparency. They were told they'd get answers. What they got was silence, stonewalling, and redacted pages. So you have to ask, if there's nothing more to the story, why does it feel like we're only getting half of it? This isn't about theories, it's about facts. Facts that remain buried under red tape, sealed files, and silence. We saw it with the JFK assassination. Decades of secrecy. And when the documents were finally released, what we found wasn't closure. It was more questions. Now it's 9/11. A different moment, a different century. But the pattern feels all too familiar. A national tragedy, a grieving nation. And then, the blackout. Redacted documents, withheld evidence, quiet refusals. If this was simply a failure of intelligence, we deserve to understand how it happened, fully. But if it was more than that, if there's something deeper, something they don't want us to see, then we don't just deserve answers. We need them. So ask yourself, What are they protecting? And who? Tell us what you think. Should the 9/11 files be released in full? And if they were, what would we finally learn?